There came a time where I was like, well, some of these ideas are getting bigger and I can't accomplish this on my own. There are songs that I love to listen to, and then there are songs that make great music videos. I'll say early on, there wasn't a selection process. It was like, deal with it process. My kind of like barometer for when a treatment is finished is if I understand it enough that I could go shoot it tomorrow. I think the people who make it are the people who don't stop.
Jared Hogan. He's a writer and director known for his eerie music videos, striking commercial work for brands like Nike, Facebook, and Bose, as well as a series of chilling, genre-blurring short films. Rooted in the pursuit of authenticity, he seems to have developed a very specific tonality to his work that is unique and singular to him.
There's something about the absurdity of like that kind of movement. It's like you get to skip the awkwardness of trying to like perform well, you know? It's more like going straight into absurdity and being able to like live in that feels more true in some way.
In this episode, we discuss his process for writing music video treatments, how he learned to scale up his approach to collaboration, and his overall growth as a filmmaker. We address some common characteristics of his work, what motivates them, and much, much more. Listen closely as we bring you this honest conversation with writer and director Jared Hogan.
Can you see me?
Oh, I can see you. Clear as day.
Are you recording video?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I most likely won't use it.
You will not use it. I'm just curious because I look like an idiot the way that this is positioned. So
Yeah, you're right. That's a lot of microphone. Let's just turn that off.
I just want to look cute. You know what I mean?
No, this is actually nice. Just speaking into the void. I like it.
All right. I'm ready when you are.
Okay. What does Jared Hogan find inspiration in? Like on a regular basis, what are your influences?
It's a good question. I think it changes a lot. I'm consistently, I'm not sure. Dude, I'm just going to like talk. I don't know if you want really clean bites, but I'm just going to try and answer this.
Just go for it.
I have a lot of friends who like return to movies a lot, you know, and they'll rewatch movies. I have like this disease of like trying to consume as many different movies as possible. So I feel like I'm not going back and like referencing the same things a lot. And sometimes it's frustrating for me because I kind of want to, but I don't mean this in a bad way because this could characterize it as being negative, but it feels like homework. If there's like a free moment, I'm like, what can I consume that I haven't yet? You know?
Yeah.
I'm interested in filmmaking that is more patient, often working within like a fixed frame and like blocking and kind of movement within like a more photographic kind of fixed frame and what opportunities there are with kind of those limitations. So that's where I feel drawn more personally, but I'm just trying to, you know, consume as much as possible. And I do feel more influenced at the moment. I know this is frame set and we're talking about images, but I'm just writing a lot more right now. And I feel more kind of like I'm consuming like structure and kind of things of that nature, you know, right now, like how stories are kind of put together and how to tell them.
You know, that's the first time I think I've ever heard anyone consider their consumption of film and inspiration as homework.
It's probably not the right way to put it, but
does that mean you put intentional effort towards it?
Yeah, for sure. But it's more like I just feel like I'm always behind. You know, I feel like there's so much to be seen that I haven't seen. Yeah, I'm just always looking to consume something that might ignite something within myself, you know?
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, it's just overwhelming to me just how much there is to consume today.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's overwhelming to think about just the history of film. I mean, you know, we have over 100 years of films to watch. And I feel like, yeah, the volume right now is out of control as far as what's being made, probably more on the television side, but yeah, it feels like I can't keep up. And I have friends who like have kind of disengaged because of that. And that's not been my reaction to it. I feel like a student, like I'm just trying to consume and study as much as I can,
Let's go on a tangent real quick. I'm going to take this off the rails. I'm just curious.
Yeah, sure.
What is it about filmmakers? I know you went to SCAD, you went to film school. What is it about filmmakers who like to draw inspiration from films that are old? Like there seems to be a timeless genre of film that we like to study. Why is that?
I mean, I'll speak for myself. I'm like, there is just like the core language, of cinema. I think watching, older films, you have to watch it with like some context in mind, of what was kind of happening and what existed and what didn't exist at the time, and how groundbreaking so many decisions were that were being made, techniques that were being innovated for the first time. I feel drawn towards that. I mean, I feel like the influence that Scorsese has had on me it's happened much more recently. Watching not even just his later films, but his earlier stuff as well. I don't know if there's anyone working right now that gives less of a fuck. Like he's just like has ideas, boundless ideas, like endless ideas, and he just like does them. Like ideas that shouldn't work, that don't work on paper, but he does them, and you're like, oh fuck, that's genius, And I feel drawn to that. I don't mean necessarily like a filmmaker that's endlessly just like bold and pushing the bound. Like I'm not always drawn to that. But I think what I relate to a lot with Scorsese and a lot of different filmmakers is whether it's, the image on the screen or even just how the story is constructed or written. It's like, if they're not interested in something, they just omit it. Their focus is like what they're interested in. And I like that. And I think that there's like an economy to those kinds of films where they're just focused on what they want to tell and not like anyone else's expectations, I guess.
How do you prepare for a project? Like, what's your approach to feeling ready?
Well, I mean, that's semi-vague. I'm like, for a commercial, it's different. For a music video, it's different. For a film, it's different, Mm-hmm. So it depends on the project. I'm like, there are projects in which I enter in intentionally not wanting to know what I'm going to do, wanting to be reactive. I feel like that's a big part of me, like coming up, was learning how to have no money and how to show up with a camera and react to kind of the surroundings that I was given, whether that's, non-talent that I'm trying to direct and make work in a space that I haven't seen yet or scouted, So there is a core of like my development that's wrapped up in not knowing, and reacting. So I always try and find some semblance of that in what I'm doing, leaving room for things like that. But again, it's different, for a commercial, it's often storyboarded and planned to a T. For a film, for me, I have like an idea, definitely what the scene is. I have some visual ideas that I want to like explore, but just as often as those visual ideas like work, I, frame a shot and I'm like, it doesn't work. So then I've got to, pivot and figure it out. So, and then for music video, it really depends on the creative, Am I embracing kind of the unknown, or do I need to have everything dialed in to make clients and agencies and labels and artists like feel confident that we're going to knock it out? So it always just kind of depends, but I'm always looking for ways to be reactive and make decisions kind of in the moment as much as possible.
Let's say whether it's a scout of a location or you're walking on set for the first time, where do your eyes go first?
It's a good question. Man, what a good question. I'm channeling. I'm like flipping through different chapters in my mind right now. Different scouts I've been on. It's funny, and I think you'll understand this. Is I feel like I look for like texture. I look for like what looks like the most true. And this might sound dumb, but I'm like, what's the most like true looking part of this location? The most like lived in part of this that I can kind of like channel and really like hone in on and focus on.
Expand upon that. What do you mean?
Well, at the risk of sounding really pretentious, I'm just trying to find like kind of the truth, in a location. And that sounds maybe kind of annoying saying it like that, but like what resonates on screen as like, this is the world I'm trying to create. How can I like add this to like the, one of the swatches, of fabric or like one of the textures that I'm kind of collecting to make this world feel cohesive and, like I said, like lived in. So I think I'm looking for those little corners, those little spaces that feel like they fit.
It sounds like there's a selection process that happens. How has that selection process changed over your career?
I mean, I'll say early on, there wasn't a selection process. It was like, deal with it process. Like there weren't multiple options. It was like, here's a home of this person you're going to do an interview with. And we're not going to go scout multiple homes. It's like, how are you going to make this work? Which I think was a good part of my development, being able to choose what to show and what not to show, So to your point, maybe that's part of the selection process. I think being able to select between options, sometimes that can be kind of crippling and paralyzing. Having those amount of options, it's maybe even easier sometimes just to be stuck with something and having to make it work, But when it comes to, like selecting a location or creating a world from like a handful of locations, I think it's kind of what I described. I think it's like, it's more intuitive, at least for me, than it is like checking off boxes. It's like, do these things kind of collectively create this world that I had in my head when I was writing this,
Yeah. That's the important part, isn't it, too? Having that world in your head, having that, for lack of a better term, vision for something.
Yeah. I don't always have that. I don't know how you feel about that, but I'm like, sometimes I have a pretty distinct idea of what that world is. Other times I have like an angle. I have like a like I can see like a facet of it, but I don't have like a well-rounded understanding of it. Sometimes it's fitting a location into that pre-existing kind of world that I know I want to build. Sometimes it's the location kind of revealing to me like, this is it. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's not always the same process. Sometimes it's kind of putting the puzzle pieces together in real time.
It's fun to find it along the way sometimes.
It's funny. I feel like, speaking of just like progression in my career and things, I feel like a lesson I learned early on when it comes to kind of just like freewheeling, when it comes to like maybe not having a shot list or not knowing exactly how the day is going to flow or whatever. So much of my early career, I think most people's early career is grabbing a camera and going and shooting, and you're kind of like doing it more or less on your own. Maybe you've got a couple people there. I think what I realized early on, while still wanting to like have room for thinking like that and reacting, is that I was really excluding really talented people who wanted to help, like not having like a, for lack of a better term, like a vision, like written out, or like a framework of, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Here's kind of like the world I'm trying to build. Here's the look and feel, or whatever the kind of like the driving creative force. I felt like when I didn't have it kind of outlined and it wasn't like shareable with like, whether that's a DP or production designer or grip, gaff, whatever, it felt like they were kind of along for the ride and weren't really able to contribute at a high level. And they weren't really able to like bring their skill set to it. And I think that I learned that the hard way. I had to realize I couldn't do it all myself, and that being able to make the process a bit more additive and collaborative was a huge thing. Being able to invite more people in,
I imagine there was a point in your career when you started finding yourself working with more and more people. You found, what was that initial transition like for you when it came to having more? Because you still have a vision in your head, and how do you get that through with more people?
You write it down. you know, I think being able to effectively communicate what I want to create, whether that's, you know, on the page or in a conversation or on a call. And it's not easy. You know, I don't know how you feel about it, but I often kind of get self-conscious about expressing my ideas over and over again because it feels like more and more opportunities for people to tell you that they're stupid, you know? So I don't always love like being, I don't like repeating myself. Like when it comes to an idea, I kind of like to keep it to myself and try and make it happen. But I think that there came a time where I was like, well, some of these ideas are getting bigger and, I can't accomplish this on my own. So it's either I'm going to have to like throttle down like kind of my creative aspirations for what this project is, or I'm going to have to invite more people in. And obviously I chose to try and share my ideas more widely and articulate my ideas in a way that's like, bringing more people into the process. I say that, and I'm also like, I still keep kind of the core pretty small. What I don't mean is everyone is a part of every decision and it's all like a democracy and everyone has like an even say and we're taking votes and like, obviously not, you know, it's not that. And I do like to keep kind of the creative core pretty small and make decisions effectively and quickly and efficiently. So it's kind of both of those things coexisting, like letting people in and understanding like what we're making and wanting them to feel like they are a part of what we're doing because they absolutely are. A core part of kind of executing like whatever you want to call it, vision or film or script or whatever. But I think keeping the real creative core pretty tight and small. And I think trying to carry that from project to project is important.
Is there a person within the filmmaking process as a whole that you rely on the most?
DP. Director of photography, 100%. I was shooting all of my own stuff for a very long time, you know, and that's how I learned how to make films, was being behind the camera, framing something up, trying to translate ideas in my head to visuals on a screen. And I didn't come up as like a writer. I feel much more connected to that part of the process now in my career, but I came up behind the camera, framing things up and moving quickly. And how can I express the most within a frame? That was kind of my entry into this whole medium. So I feel very linked to that part of the process. For me on set, of course, I'm working with a production designer and first AD and all kinds of different facets of the production to make sure that we're getting what we need and that's looking the way it needs to look and communicating what it needs to communicate and all of those things. But for me, the DP is like, that's like my partner. You know, they're obviously across more like logistical elements of how to get the frame and how to get the image where it needs to be to kind of accomplish what I'm hopefully communicating effectively. But for me, that's like, yeah, that's my person on set is it's the two of us kind of making this thing happen.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way?
Oh yeah. I totally feel that way. So selective with that DP process because there's no shortage of incredible DPs out there that could make a good image, right?
Yeah.
But it's also it's also shorthand. It's also your ability to communicate without even really saying much. Do you agree?
Yeah, for sure. It's funny though, because I love, you know, working with DPs that I do have a shorthand with. I also love working with new DPs, new to me, you know, someone I haven't worked with before because I have a way of doing things and I can easily get entrenched in that, especially with someone that I've worked with before. But I think working with DPs, I can kind of expand my horizons a bit. I like that energy, you know, I like bringing in a DP that like, yeah, has a different perspective on what I'm trying to accomplish, you know, so it's still within like kind of the overarching vision of what I'm doing, but it's like, what if we did it this way? And, yeah, I'm kind of addicted to that energy on set, you know?
As a director, I feel like I box myself in. Like, I know what I'm going to want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not tough. You know what I mean? Like, I like to think that I'm dynamic in that way, but honestly, like, what I gravitate towards is what I gravitate towards, and having someone there to move that around, super valuable.
Yeah. 100%. 100% agree.
Okay. Let's talk treatments. You've written more than a few in your career. How do you know how much work to put into one?
Dude, I wish I had like a real answer to that. Some come easily. Some are a fucking wrestling match. Dude, I wrote a treatment 2 weeks ago that I pretty much had finished before I finished listening to the song for the first time. I don't actually mean like the treatment was done, but I knew what the concept was before the song was even over. That's rare. Then there are others where I will literally work for like 25 hours trying to like, I don't do this as much anymore. I would say early on when it felt like this is a great artist, this is a great song, I'll never get this opportunity again, I have to send something in, I would bang my head against a wall. And the frustrating and hard part is, for me, I don't know how you feel, but for me, it's never like an equation where this type of artist or an artist that I like a lot, I'm going to write a great treatment for. And it sucks because it's like there are songs that I love to listen to, and then there are songs that make great music videos. There are songs that lend themselves to being great music videos. It's the structure of a song, the length of a song, the dynamics of a song. And dude, I've had so many tracks or briefs come in from artists that I love, and I listen to it and I'm like, shit, I don't know what to do with this. I wish I did so badly, but I don't know what to do with this. And then I have briefs come in from artists that maybe I've never heard of or I haven't listened to very much. And I hear the song and I'm like, I know exactly what this is. I know exactly how to do this. I could go shoot this tomorrow. You know, it's such a roll of the dice. I'm sure you had that same experience.
It did. Yeah, it's not just me. I'll get a song. I'll be put in the room, and I'm like, I can't believe I'm in this room right now. This is amazing. I want so badly. I want nothing more but to bring beautiful visuals that justify how much I love this song, how much I love this music. But you can't do it. I sometimes I just can't do it.
Dude, I literally had a brief come in a couple of weeks ago. I replied to my rep and I was like, this is the best song I've gotten in a year. And then 2 weeks later, I had to be like, I'm sorry, I have to pass. I just don't have it. I don't have, maybe it's pressure. I don't know. But I didn't have the idea that was like, that did the song justice, you know?
Yeah.
It fucking sucks.
How do you know when you've like finished a treatment?
My kind of like barometer for when a treatment is finished is if I understand it enough that I could go shoot it tomorrow. Like I understand how I would approach this, the logistics of it. I have my head around like the core concept enough that I like get it on a level that I could go execute it. And I will say there have been treatments that I've sent in where I'm like, I don't know if I quite understand even what this is yet.
Yeah. Been there.
And I'll send it in and be like, I don't think I nailed that.
Yeah. I mean, like, in your opinion, what's the purpose of a treatment and who's it really for?
Well, who's it for is interesting because sometimes the answer to that can be different. Effectively, like a treatment is for an artist to understand in like a brief, succinct, hopefully pretty like punchy, dynamic way, what the idea is for a music video. So often that's explained through, here's the concept, here's kind of the summary of how it would go, here's description and references for look and feel and how we would approach it visually. Oftentimes there are other elements that come up that need to be discussed based on what the song is or what the creative approach is. But often it's really just trying to communicate, here's my vision for this music video. You ask, who's it for? I'm always writing to the artist. But I also know that often treatments don't make it to the artist. And there's a commissioner and other people at the label that are kind of sorting those out. So I think that feels impossible to write to kind of an invisible person that's maybe going to be reading it first. So I just do my best to kind of like speak the language of the artist,
Quick question about talent, about casting, right? When it comes to casting, like, what are you looking for? Depending on the project, who are your favorite types of people to work with when it comes to who you put in front of the camera?
I mean, they got to have a face. You know what I mean? There's got to be like, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've written that in a brief for a casting director. It's like, it's just got to be a strange face. Obviously, depending on the level of complexity what we're asking from an actor, acting chops are huge and a real like leading consideration, but I kind of won't put them in front of the camera unless they're like almost shouldn't be in front of the camera.
I love it. Yeah. Some of the best things I've ever shot were people who have no business being in front of a camera.
Yeah.
All right. Now it's time for my favorite segment. You have consistencies in your work, like most filmmakers who've created for long enough do. We've identified some of yours.
Okay.
And I'd like to hear where they come from.
Okay. All right.
You ready?
I'm interested. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about your use of chairs. Like, especially in your music video work, there always seems to be one hanging around.
I think there is something that interests me about the intersection of like photography and the moving image. I did this project when I was in film school called the Lumiere Project. It was like the first thing that I did when I was in film school. The instructions, and it's kind of strange how informative it has been for my career, but the instructions were basically, obviously it was referencing like the Lumiere brothers, who basically created like the first motion picture camera in France. But you can't move the frame, no panning, no tilting, no audio, no music, no dialogue, no pushing in, no pulling out. It was a fixed frame. And what can you like accomplish within like a fixed frame? And for whatever reason, that's kind of stuck with me. And circling back to chairs, there's just something about a chair slightly askew, slightly off axis in the frame. I don't know. It fucking gets me though. I love it.
My first time on set ever, Jared, was with you back in 2016. And we were at a church and
Mercury and Lightning, right?
Mercury and Lightning for John Mark McMillan. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were upstairs and there was this room full of chairs. And I think one of my first tasks was to take these chairs and position them perfectly in a circle facing each other in a room.
That's honestly one of my favorite shots I've ever shot.
And Jared, I was like, I'm not going to ask questions. This is what I was told to do. I'm going to do it. There was a lot of odd things I did on that shoot, but that was one of the first things I did. That and almost put a piece of speed rail through the window. I don't know if you remember that, but
no, I don't.
Yeah, I mean, one of my first things ever on set was to put chairs in a circle for you. You know what I mean? And so,
yeah,
when I see it as consistently as I do in your work, I just have to ask.
I don't know if I have a good answer. But you're not wrong.
You do a really great job of capturing people in general, but you also sprinkle in these portraits of people that are breaking the fourth wall throughout your piece. Do you have a new answer for that, or did you kind of answer that already?
Hearing you phrase it that way, I do think there is. I mean, when I was in film school, I was convinced that I was going to be a documentary director. So I think that I'm always kind of interested in blurring those lines of, there being like some sense of knowing, some reality that's kind of like encroaching in this like kind of fake world. I don't know, trying to blend those things somehow always is kind of fascinating and interesting to me.
What do you think that does? What do you think that shot does, the portrait shot where the subject looks into the camera?
I don't know. Looking into the camera or not, I think portraits for me, I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier of just like we were talking about with locations, but it's hard not to feel the truth in like seeing someone's face, unobscured. We talked about locations where it's like, do they feel lived in? Do they feel like they've seen some life? And I don't know if there's anything much more expressive of that than a face, you know?
All right, next one. I've noticed this, and especially in your music video work, that the subject has this frenetic, ragged, almost labored performance style.
Can you describe that some more? Or give me an example.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I understand.
Yeah, I can. Joji, Slow Dancing in the Dark. The Old Man in the World Your Love video for John Mark.
Yep.
Fever Pitch, Rainbow Kitten Surprise. Like, even in your earlier experimental work, there's just this choreography style that seems to come from you. And, well, obviously we all love it. Where do you think that comes from?
Again, I think coming up the way that I did, it was always like, how do I make people who maybe aren't totally comfortable being in front of the camera feel natural? And I think there's something about, and often I have to do the movements first. I have to look stupid first. But there's something about the absurdity of like that kind of movement that I feel like breaks it like kind of like penetrates like the nerves, you know, of trying to look a certain way and being able to just like lean into the absurdity of that type of movement. It's like you get to skip the awkwardness of trying to like perform well, you know. It's more like going straight into absurdity and being able to like live in that feels more true in some way.
Cool. Yeah, and I mean there's more. There's cars from the 90s, spare pieces of plastic laying around, backdrops in the frame. You know, the classic Jared Hogan motifs. But a few more questions. We've got a couple minutes left here. In my mind, there's a project I will probably be chasing for the rest of my life. The people I was with, the project I was shooting, the serendipity involved. I mean, I have that once in a lifetime shoot burned into my brain for various reasons. What is that for you? Do you have one of those?
There is a project that I did with this artist named H.C. McIntyre. She's living in North Carolina in Durham. And I reached out to her on Twitter. I just bought her record at a record store. I never heard of her before, but knew she was like a local North Carolina musician. I knew she was kind of in like the Angel Olsen world a little bit. She's in her band. I think the video cost $800. I borrowed a camera from a friend, got my buddy Christian Schultz to DP it, worked with Heather, H.C. McIntyre, on kind of the creative behind it. She was very simple, basically like wanting to reference kind of like the power of essentially like group therapy and having family close and getting through hard times with people that you care about. And we drove up to Durham on like a weekend and had a camera and went to this like unfinished basement of like an art gallery. And Heather had invited like her roommate, her landlord, friends and family. And the idea was essentially fairly loose, but was essentially like Heather's words kind of being embodied by the people who were closest to her. So we literally just had a couple chairs and a couple of lights, and we just positioned people in this basement for the day, ordered Jimmy John's and like sat on like a dusty floor and got to know Heather and her girlfriend and all of her friends and family. And it was very simple. We tried a lot of things that like didn't know if they would work. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. And I think we created something really strange and special. And for whatever reason, I just love that video, maybe more than anything I've ever made. And so much of it was wrapped up in the experience. I think it is easy for me I'm trying to get better at this, but to rewrite kind of the experience of making something based on the reception that I get for the work. You know, if it's not received the way that I want it to be, I'll often like rewrite that, like, it wasn't that great of an experience. I should have done this. I should have done that, blah, blah, blah. That specifically, though, it was such a special time making that. And there was so much trust between, it's crazy how close I got to Heather just in that one day. It was really special. It kind of made me fall in love with, like, maybe that's why I love it so much. There was something about working with someone that I didn't really know, but connecting on such a visceral level artistically, and there was so much trust. It kind of was like, man, music videos can be very special.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, man, when I look back at projects, they like, especially music videos, they just mark entire seasons of life for me, you know?
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, well, here's a pretty basic question. What would this Jared tell the Jared of 8 years ago?
There is no rushing anything. I think the people who make it are the people who don't stop. It's not always like the most talented people or the most connected people. I think it's oftentimes the people who just are committed to continuing on, you know, something like that. I just know myself now, and I'm a little bit more patient. I'm a little bit more like level-headed, whether it's Jared 8 years ago or Jared 15 years ago. I wanted it all now, you know. I wanted all the success. I wanted all the accolades. I wanted all the opportunities. And I would look around and be like, why does so-and-so get this or whatever? And I think it's just, it doesn't matter. It is like a path, and it just takes time.
Last question. Who are you creating for at the end of the day?
I'll say it like this. Most of the work that I do is to sustain and buy me more time to do the work that is for me. The work is not always for me, but the work that pays the bills so that I'll have more time to keep working and developing the things that I do want to do long term, you know? So is the work for me? I don't know. I know it fulfills some part of me, but I hope it does the same for people who watch it, you know?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great answer. Okay, Jared, thank you. This was fun.
Do you have everything you need?
Yeah, I'm going to stop the recording and then figure out what to do with all this.
Okay.
Thank you for tuning in. This has been a production of Frameset. Our main goal is to be a source of inspiration to filmmakers everywhere. You can see what we're about at frameset.app.